follow along. I'll leave the link to it down within the video kit. So let's first install it by running npm install @jsmastery/utils, and then we can copy its usage. Instead of just automatically pushing to this route, we will first form this new URL by using the form URL query functionality, which we have to import from JSMastery utils. To it, we're gonna then pass the search params, which contains everything, in this case the topic, and we wanna choose which key we wanna update. So I'll say we wanna update the topic field with the search query, which is the value we just typed into that input. Then we wanna call the router.push, and we wanna set scroll to false. Okay, so let me show you how this works. If I go back, I'll expand this just a bit so you can see the URL bar. And if I type test right here, you'll notice that automatically the topic will get changed to test. If I add a keystroke or remove it, you can see that it is automatically reflecting what is shown here. So if I search for something that doesn't exist, it goes away. And if I search for next, it is right here because it's filtering it. Keep in mind that the search input itself is not doing any filtering. Rather, it is just changing the URL bar, and then within the companions library, we're using those search params that the input is updating to be able to pass this new topic or the subject into the get all companions, which then filters it for us and returns the right companions. But we're not done yet. Here's the issue that I was talking to you about. If I remove everything from the search input, since we're no longer in this if statement, you can notice that this search query will still remain right here. So we have to add an else and say if path name is equal to /companions, we want to remove the keys from the URL query by doing this. New URL is equal to remove keys from URL query, which we have to import from this utility package, to which we pass the new search params and choose which key we want to remove. In this case, it is the topic, and then we just push over to that URL. So if I go back and if I type test, you can see that we get redirected to it. But if I delete it, it gets completely cleaned up from the URL. And this already is amazing. But one issue is that every single keystroke that we make actually creates another call to our database and to our API, which we don't want to do. It is putting too much pressure on our database to give us back the data for every keystroke, but maybe we just wanted to type Next.js and get one single response back and not 6 for every single keystroke. So to fix this, we have to add a delay or a debounce to this use effect. And we can do that by saying const delay debounce fn, as in function, will be equal to set timeout, where we provide a callback function. And then we bring this entire if statement into this callback function. And then as the second parameter of that function, which is right here at the end, we can provide to it the number of milliseconds of the delay. For example, we can do 500 milliseconds. So now for every single letter that you type, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it's not actually going to send a request until you wait for more than 500 milliseconds. So if you're typing fast enough, you can type the entire word Next.js, and it's only going to make one single request to the database. Let me show you. A, B, C. It made 3 separate requests, but if I now type Next.js, it actually made only one. Pretty cool, right? The more you know. And as I said, I dove super deep into how the search params work within modern Next.js applications. So deep, in fact, that I decided to create this very simple package which simplifies the usage of adding and removing keys from the URL query. And I actually created it as an npm package, which was created as part of the Ultimate Next.js course. So if you like this course and you want to dive much deeper into what Next.js has to offer so you can build your applications in the best way possible, well, go ahead and check out the Ultimate Next.js course. Trust me, you won't be disappointed, as it is our best and most detailed course right now. And I would dare to say that it is the best Next.js course on the internet. And as of recently, we turned on the 7-day free trial. So if you want to try it out completely for free, just dive into it. You can do that right now. Do it and let me know what you think. With that in mind, now that we have this search input, we also want to add the filter for the subjects. So head over into the subject filter component. And since this one is super simple to the input, but even simpler than that, I actually want to challenge you to try to build it right now on your own. Go to the design, check out how it needs to look like. It is a single ShadCN select component, which allows people to select different subjects. So you'll most likely have to use our constants right here, where we have the list of subjects. There we go. Map over them, display a new list item or select item for every single one of these options, and then change the state and modify the URL bar to add the end subject is equal to the selected subject. Try it out and let me know how it goes. I'll provide you with a solution within the video kit, which I will now copy and paste right here in 3, 2, 1. There we go. It should look something like this. You have the subject. You can select all subjects, which just cleans it up, or you can select a specific subject. I think all of these are empty besides coding right now where our Next.js component lies. So when it comes to how we're doing the actual change of the search params, it is exactly the same as what we have done with the input. We modify the key, we push it, and we remove it if all is selected. Perfect. With that in mind, you now have a fully functional companion library, which fetches all the companions, and you have complete sorting and filtering so that if it doesn't exist, you don't show it. If something does exist, like Next.js in this case, you do show it, and you can also filter out by subject. Of course, this is not so useful at this point in time because we have only one companion, but later on, once you have more, or you want to search through other people's companions, this will be super useful, trust me. But of course, what is this card good for if it's not actually doing anything? If I click launch lesson, it just leads me to the companion session, but it is completely empty. So in the next lesson, let's focus on implementing the core of our app's functionalities, and that is actually crafting our educational companion that will speak to us, and based off of these information that we provided, such as the title, category, description, and so on, it'll actually teach us what we need to learn about. This course has been exciting up to this point, but we're just getting started. It's time to implement the core functionality of our application. Auth is here, billing is here as well, but now we gotta give something to our users. And that something is the ability to have the actual conversation with their AI teacher companion. To do that, we'll use VAPI, the voice AI agents for developers. So click the link down in the description to be able to follow along and see exactly what I'm seeing, and then sign up so you can visit your dashboard. Once you're in, you can head over to Assistants, and in my case, it looks like I already have one assistant created. If you don't, you can just immediately create a new one. But let's see what Riley is all about. I mean, check this out. You can configure the behavior of the assistant to behave exactly how you want it. Everything from choosing a provider to the model that the provider uses, the first message and the system prompt, and more. You can also choose the provider for the voice. VAPI has their built-in ones, but you can also switch to 11 Labs or Azure. And one thing that I love about VAPI is that we don't have to go ahead and get our own OpenAI keys, for example, or Google Gemini keys. We also don't have to create an account on 11 Labs to be able to use their text-to-speech. Everything comes right out of the box. And you can also test it out immediately by clicking Talk to Assistant. Let's see what it does.
Thank you for calling Wellness Partners. This is Riley, your scheduling assistant. How may I help you today?
Hey, bro. How are you doing?
Hi there. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How can I assist you with scheduling your appointment today?
No appointments. I'm just using you to show how great you speak because you're not a real human. You're an AI after all.
That's right. I'm an AI here to help with scheduling and providing information. I'm glad you're enjoying the way I communicate. If you ever need assistance with appointments or have questions about our services, feel free to reach out.
Okay, this sounds amazing. Great. Super happy that we tested it out and had a call with the assistant. But now it's time to set it up within our application. So let me show you how simple it is. Just head over into VAPI API keys and create a new public key. You can call it JSM Converso and just click Create Public Token. As soon as you do that, you can just copy it, head back into your application, into the .env.local, and then at the bottom, you can say VAPI, and you can add a new key of next public VAPI web token, and you can paste it right here. Perfect. So now how would we go about using it within our application? Well, it is super simple. We just have to install the VAPI web SDK by running npm install @vapi-ai/web. Now that it is installed, let's head over into lib and create a new file called vapi.sdk.ts. And within it, we can just create and export a new instance of VAPI by saying export const VAPI is equal to new VAPI coming from VAPI AI web, to which we need to pass the process.env dot next public VAPI web token. And we can add an exclamation mark to let TypeScript know that we know that it's going to be there. So if you do that, now we'll be able to use this VAPI instance within our code. First, we need to get one individual companion from the database. So let's head over into lib, actions, and companion actions.ts. Currently, we're fetching many companions, but now we need to get just a single one so we can actually generate that companion. So just below get all companions, let's create another server action. Export const get companion is equal to an asynchronous function where we accept an ID of that companion. As usual, we get access to our Supabase by creating a new Supabase client for this specific call. And then we just want to make a call by saying await Supabase dot from companions, give me everything. So I'll select everything and only give me the one that equals ID equal to the ID that we're passing right here through params. Now, this will give us back the data, so I can destructure the data, as well as the error from this await Supabase call. Once we have it, if there is an error, in that case, we'll simply return the console.log of the error, else we will return data 0, which is the actual companion. Now we can head over to that companion details page, which is under app, companions, ID, page.tsx, and we can try to fetch that single companion's details. In this case, we won't be doing that through search params like before, but rather we'll be doing it through just params, which will be of a type companion, session, page, props, which we can define just above. I'll say interface of companion, session, page, props, and we accept params, which is actually a promise, which will then be resolved with an ID of a type string. Let's spell interface properly, and now we can see we're good. So once again, what is the difference between params in Next.js and search params? You know that search params have the URL and then question mark something or key is equal to the value. And then you can append one more key is equal to another value. But with params, you have the URL and then you have a /, and then you have a specific ID or any kind of a random value right here. So you can extract that value on its own. You cannot extract the key and the value. It's already in there within the URL. And in this case, the params will contain the ID. Why? Because we have put it right here within square brackets. If we put something else right here, then we would have to change this from ID to that something else, which is the file name. Perfect. It'll make more sense in action. So now I can destructure the ID by calling await params. And since I'm using await, I have to add async right here. Next, now that we have the ID, we can very easily call the server action we created. Const companion is equal to await get companion, and we can pass in the ID. And we can also get the current user by saying const user is equal to await current user, and that's it. It is so simple to do that using the functions we have already created. Now let's do some checks. If there is no user, we can just redirect using the Next.js redirection to /sign in. Pretty simple, right? No user, you can't access. Else, if there is no companion, in that case, we can redirect to /companions, which is the all companions page. But if all of that is good, and now we have actually fetched the important details we have, such as the ID, the user, and the companion details itself, we can start focusing on the UI of the companion session. So let's bring back our browser, and I'll turn this into a main tag because our entire page is right here within this main. Next, I'll create an article, and this article will have a class name equal to flex, rounded dash border, justify between, padding of 6, max MD flex call, so we can show more elements one below another. Next, within this article, I will render a div, and this div will have a class name equal to flex, items dash center, and a gap of 2 in between the elements, within which we'll have another div that'll have a class name of size of 72 pixels, flex, items dash center, justify dash center, rounded dash LG, on max medium devices hidden. You'll see very soon what we're doing right here as soon as I provided a style. So right here, I will say style is equal to background color is equal to get subject color, to which we need to provide the companion dot subject. And it looks like subject doesn't exist on companion because companion is of a type number. What? That definitely shouldn't be the case. Oh, look, I'm returning just an empty array of 0, and TypeScript automatically knew that that doesn't make sense. So actually what I should have been returning is data 0. Hopefully you noticed this. But if you fix it, you'll notice that now it no longer complains. But if that is now fixed, then where's the background color? Well, let me fix this items center, and let's console log the companion to actually see what we're getting back from it. Once you do that, I'll open up my terminal, scroll all the way down and reload, and you can see that we have the subject right here, which is coding. Oh, I think I know why we can't see it. That's because on smaller devices, it is hidden. But as I expand it, you can see this little rectangle within which we're going to display the topic icon. The only thing we have to do here is just say image with a source of /icons /companion dot subject dot svg with an alt tag of companion dot subject, a width of 35 and a height of 35 as well. So this one is for the desktop devices. But now we can exit this div, and below it create another div that'll be visible on all screen sizes. I'll give it a class name of flex dash call, and a gap of 2. Within it, I'll create another div. Oh, it looks like I have to go to sleep, but I will collapse that because creating these courses for you is what I really love doing. So now this div will have a class name equal to flex, items dash center, and a gap of 2. And I'll render a p tag that'll render the companion dot name with a class name of font dash bold and text dash 2xl. Below it, I'll render a div that'll have a class name equal to subject dash badge, and on max small devices, it'll be hidden. And here we can render the companion dot subject. It also won't show on mobile devices. Now let's scroll a bit down. So basically one div down, and then here create a p tag that'll have a class name of text-lg, and we'll render the companion dot topic. There we go, figuring out server versus client components in Next.js and React. And now that I think about it, I'm mentioning companion a lot. So instead of saying companion dot this, companion dot that, what we can do is just destructure those values out of the companion. So I can extract the name, the subject, the title. What else do we have? We have a topic, a duration, and we'll see if we have something else, we can easily add it later on as well. And then, for example, I can say if there's no name, then point to companions. Now I can just remove the word companion in front of every other part that comes from the companion, and it makes a bit more sense code-wise. Perfect. Now we can go below this div that contains the p tag and below one more div, and here we'll render the duration in minutes. Let's style it a bit better by giving it a class name of items-start, text-to-Excel, and on max medium devices, we will hide that duration. Perfect. Now you can think of this as just the header for the actual AI conversation. I think it makes a bit more sense on desktop as it actually is a header. We can see the topic, the title, the category, the description, and the duration. But here is where the magic happens. Now we have to develop the rest of the UI, which is where the actual conversation with our educational AI voice companion will happen. So let's do that in the next lesson. Let's make our app speak and teach us things. Vapi's SDK will send an event every time when the AI is speaking, and we can use that event to add nice animations to keep our users more engaged. To do that, we're going to use Lottie files, which will provide us some animations and allow us to make our app that much more engaging. You can search for something like a sound or maybe a sound wave and download it to make it seem like our AI bot is actually speaking with this animated wave. You can choose any free animation from here that you like, but I actually provided the one that I liked most right here under constants, soundwaves.json. Oh, and there's one more thing we have to do. Since we'll use our profile picture right here to show that we are speaking with that bot, we have to authorize it within our Next.js config. So head over into nextconfig.ts, and right here you can say images, remote patterns, and then an array where you can have one object of hostname img.clerk.com, because our profile image is stored on Clerk. Now we can create a new component where we're going to display those sound waves, and I'll create it within the components folder and call it companion component.tsx. Run rafce within it, and then import it within our session details, which is companions ID. And we can put it right here below this article by just having an empty companion component. You should be able to see it right here at the bottom right. There it is. And now we can dive into it and implement it. Let's start with a bit of JSX to give you an idea of how our structure will look like. First, turn this div into a section with a class name of flex, flex-call, and an h of 70 VH. Why? Because the header will take the rest of the 30 VH. Next, within this section, I'll create another section that'll have a class name equal to flex, a gap of 8, on max small devices, flex-call, and finally within it, we can render a div that'll have a class name equal to companion section. Then within it, you can display another div, which will have a class name equal to companion-avatar, and you can also give it a style property to dynamically style it with a background color equal to getSubjectColor, to which we can pass the subject. But where is this subject coming from? Well, we'll have to pass it right into the companion component. It's being called right here within the companion session, so we have to pass all of the right props. Instead of just saying subject is equal to subject, topic is equal to topic, and so on, we can just spread the initial companion data. So I will just copy this part, still leave it as just companion right here, and then I will spread it below. Const, we take this out of the companion, but what this allows us to do is to still have the full companion object together at the top. So now we know that name, subject, title, topic, and duration are right here. So what we can just do is spread the properties of the companion. But we still have to pass some additional. And as I said, this will automatically pass the following props. But we have to pass some additional details as well, which is the companion ID, which we have stored under ID, the username, which will be equal to user.firstname, and we can add an exclamation mark to let it know that it's there. Same thing for the user image, which is under user.imageURL. And I think that is it then. Now we can head over into the companion component and accept all of those props at the top. So I will just destructure them. Companion ID, subject, topic, name, username, user image, style, and voice. Perfect. And then we can set it to be of a type, companion, component, props. Perfect. And now you can see that we get this color. Within this div, we can also render an image that'll show us when the call status is inactive or connecting. So I'll render a div and I'll give it a class name equal to CN for class names, which you have to import. And it'll always have the absolute style as well as a transition opacity and a duration of 1000 for the animation. But then, based off of the status, we have to figure out what icon do we show. So we need to create a new use state field at the top. I'll use the use state snippet to quickly create it, and I'll call it a call status, which will be a use state of a type call status. And at the start, it'll be equal to call status dot inactive. And of course, don't forget to import state coming from React. There we go. And since we're using use state, of course, we have to turn this into a use client component. Otherwise, we're going to have an error. Now, what is this call status? Well, we can create it as an enum by saying enum call status, and then we can provide it different values, such as inactive is inactive, connecting is connecting, active is active, and finished is equal to finished. Now, what does this mean and why do we have those values right here? Well, if we didn't have call status.inactive as an enum, then you would just have a string of inactive. But what can happen with a string is that maybe you can just misspell it and not notice an error. But if you just misspell a string, that's not really an error, right? So your code would not know to alert you that you have made a mistake, but your app wouldn't work. But instead, if you make it into an enum and then you misspell it right here, immediately it'll complain saying that inactive doesn't exist on the type call status. Did you mean to say inactive? Which is super useful to make your code more predictable. Perfect. We're back in action. So now that we have this call status, we can change it based on the data that we get over from VAPI. So I'll create a new use effect with a callback function and a dependency array. I'll leave the dependency array to be empty, so we only want to execute it at the start. And here we want to have a couple of functions. First function will be called onCallStart, which is a function that'll simply set the call status to be equal to call status dot active. Then we want to have another const onCallEnd, where for now we can just set the call status to be equal to call status dot finished. Next, we can have onMessage. So I'll say const onMessage, and this one we'll implement soon because it doesn't have to change the call status. So for now, I'll leave it empty. And I'll also do const onError, where we'll accept the error of a type error, and then we can just console.log that error right here. Perfect. Now we'll tap into VAPI's event listeners by saying vapi.on, and make sure to import this VAPI. It is coming from that instance that we created in our vapi.sdk.ts, and say .on call start. So this is an event listener, and we want to simply call the onCallStart function when the call starts. Now I'll duplicate this a couple of times, and then we're going to have vapi.on call end. I think you can guess what we're doing. We're going to call the onCallEnd function. Next, on message, we're going to call the onMessage function. After that, we're going to have the error. There, we're going to call the onError. It looks like this onMessage is complaining because it should be a callback function. So I'll fix it. And I actually want to add two more handlers. Const on speech start. Here, we don't want to mess with the call status because the status has already been initiated, but instead, we want to set is speaking state to true. So I'll create a new state called use state snippet, is speaking, set is speaking, at the start set to false. And then right here, on speech start, we can basically set is speaking to true, and on speech end, we can set is speaking to false. So now we can also handle those here. On speech start, call the on speech start function, and on speech end, simply call the on speech end function. Basically what this does is VAPI tells our application whenever something happened with the AI bot, and then we handle it in our application using state. And then when we update the state, well, we can then do whatever we want within the application to show that to the user. Now, whenever you're adding some event handlers within the use effect, it is very important to clean them on the cleanup. And to do that, you have to say return a callback function where we can now turn those off. Just copy the ones you have, and then simply instead of on for all of these, simply say vapi.off. That way we're keeping our app optimized. Perfect. So now our values on speech start and speech end and call start and call end should actually update our two states. So we can do something based off of those states within our application. For example, right here within this CN, the class names, I'll put it into a new line so it's easier to see. We have this default string that is always present, but then after it, we can decide if call status is triple equal to call status dot finished, or if call status is triple equal to call status dot inactive. In that case, we're going to give this an opacity of 100, else we're going to give it an opacity of 0. And if call status is triple equal to call status dot connecting, in that case, we're going to give it an opacity of 100 and animate dash pulse so that it seems like we're connecting. And within this div, we can display an image, and this image will have a source of /icons / subject.svg with an alt tag of subject, a width of 150, a height of 150, and a class name of maxsm w-fit. And there we go. Now we can see the topic of our conversation. But now below that div, let's display the Lottie animation to show when the status is active. So I'll display a div with a class name of CN, and it'll always have absolute transition dash opacity, duration of 1000, but only sometimes when the call status is triple equal to call status dot active, then we want to give it an opacity of 100, else it's going to have an opacity of 0. And now within it, we can install Lottie. It's for those animations that I was telling you a bit about before. So just open up your terminal and run npm install Lottie React. And here you can just call the Lottie component like this, import from Lottie React. And to it, you can pass the Lottie ref equal to Lottie ref. This is something that we have to create just above. So head over up, below the states, create a new const Lottie ref is equal to use ref coming from React of a type Lottie ref current props at the start equal to null because we haven't yet attached anything to that ref. Then I want to create a new use effect, and this use effect will change depending on the speaking status. So in the dependency array, I'll add is speaking, and I'll also add the Lottie ref, and I'll check. If a Lottie ref exists, that means that we can do something with it. And then if we're currently speaking, then we can set the Lottie ref dot current dot play. So we'll play that animation. But else, if we're not speaking, I'll do Lottie ref dot current dot stop to stop that animation. to really make it seem like we're having a conversation. Let's actually properly open this and close it. There we go. And I'll add a question mark right here in case the current ref doesn't exist. Perfect. Now we can scroll down, and under Lottie, we now have access to this Lottie ref, but we also have to tell it what it'll stop and play. And that'll be the animation data equal to sound waves. And we have to import these sound waves at the top by saying import sound waves coming from @constants /sound waves .json. It looks like I misspelled it, but if you search for it under constants, you'll see sound waves .json. Oh, it looks like I'm missing a / right here. This is not a package, it's a file path. So if you do it correctly, sound waves are now coming in and we're displaying them within this Lottie animation. Let's also give it an autoplay set to false and a class name of companion -Lottie. And very soon, once we initiate the call with the VAPI agent, our conversational assistant, and when that changes the status to active, it'll appear right here. For now, let's head 1 and then 2 divs down, and let's render a p tag that'll render the name of this companion with a class name equal to font-bold and text-2xl. Finally, we need to show some information about us, the user speaking with the bot. So head below this div that wraps the p tag and create another div with a class name equal to user-section. Within it, a new div with a class name equal to user-avatar, and within it, an image that'll render a source of user image, an alt tag that'll render the user name, a width of about 130, a height of 130 as well, and a class name of rounded LG. If you save that and expand your screen, you can now see that we have 2 portions, one big one for the AI conversational bot and one for us. But on smaller screens, there's not really enough space to show us as well, so I think this is going to be good. But for now, I'll keep it in tablet view just so we can see what we're developing. Below the image, I'll also display a p tag with a class name equal to font-bold and text-2xl, where I'll render the username. Then we can exit this div and I'll render a button that'll have a class name equal to btn mic, as in microphone. And on click of that button, we'll want to toggle the microphone on or off. So we have to create this function right above by saying const toggle microphone. And right here within it, we first need to figure out whether we're muted right now or not, which we can do by saying is muted, vapi.isMuted. Thankfully, they provide us this function. And then vapi.setMuted to be equal to the current not is muted status. So we're basically toggling it on or off. And I also want to keep track of this within the state. So above, I'll create a new use state snippet and call it is muted, set is muted, at the start set to false. So now below it, we can set is muted to be equal to not is muted. Perfect. So now let's actually display that button right here by displaying an image within this button we created with a source of if is muted, then we'll render the /icons /mic-off.svg, else we'll render /icons /mic-on.svg with an alt tag of mic, a width of 36, a height of 36, and we can close it right there. There we go. And you can also display a p tag with a class name equal to max small devices hidden, because there's no space for it. But if we do have space, and if it is muted, it'll say turn on microphone, else it'll say turn off microphone. There we go. You can see it. And we can create another button below this button that will allow us to actually connect to the call. So I'll say button with a class name equal to cn, rounded -lg, padding y of 2, cursor dash pointer transition dash colors, because we want to change the color of the button depending on the state of the call, W full, and text white. Now, within this button, we'll want to check the current status. So if call status is triple equal to call status.active, then we want to say end session. Else, if the call status is not active, we want to check the call status one more time and check if it's equal to call status dot connecting. Because if it is connecting, then we can say connecting. Else, we can say start session. Because if it's not active and if it's not connecting, then the only last option is that we can start the session. Now, we cannot see this button yet because the text is set to white. But to be able to see it, we can add some additional class names to the button depending on the call status. So if call status is equal to active, in that case, we want to give it a BG red of 700. Else, we want to give it a BG primary. There we go, using a ternary operator. There we go. And I'll also give it another class and say if call status is equal to connecting, in that case, we can give it a class name of animate-pulse. You'll see how cool this looks like very soon. And to this button, we can also give an on click, where if call status is triple equal to active, in that case, we want to call the handle disconnect to disconnected, else we want to call the handle call, which are the two functions we need to create. So let's scroll up and let's create a function. Const handle call is equal to an asynchronous function like this. And then we're going to have another one, const handle disconnect, which is going to be another function like this. We'll implement those soon. But for now, let's deal with the rest of the UI. And that bottom part is actually super exciting because here we're going to have a transcript. You know how when you're speaking with somebody, sometimes it's tough to understand specific words, especially if you're learning about something that has new vocabulary. Well, to make your learning even better, you'll be hearing it through voice, but you'll also be seeing the transcript in real time. So let's head below this section and let's create another section with a class name equal to transcript. It'll have a div with a class name equal to transcript dash message and no scroll bar. And within here, we'll be able to map through our messages. But for now, I'll just leave this empty until we actually set up the call. Finally, we can head below this div and create one self-closing div with a class name of transcript dash fade. So we let people know that the transcript, it's fading, so we can only see the current sentence of what we're talking about. Okay, great. Now let's actually hook it up by implementing the functionalities within these functions that we have created above. First, we can deal with the handle call and handle disconnect to be able to start and end the call. First things first, on the handle call, I'll set the call status to be equal to call status dot connecting. And then we want to override our assistant by saying const assistant overrides will be equal to an object where we can provide variable values. And those will be a subject, a topic, and the style. So our assistant knows what they're talking about. And we can also say client messages, give me back the transcript, and server messages will be equal to an empty array. Then we have to call vapi.start, and here we'll have to pass the assistant configuration, which I already shared with you within utils.ts. If you check this out, you'll notice that we have this getSubjectColor, which we used a lot, but then we also have this commented out configure assistant function. We'll uncomment it and go through it together line by line. Don't forget to also uncomment the imports. The only reason why I provided this to you is because it has a lot of text that we have to copy and paste in order to train our AI assistant to be the best tutor possible. But everything else, we're going to go over line by line. So, what do we have here? Well, first of all, we're trying to get access to the ID of the voice that we want to use. And we actually have two voices right here. Or you can think of it as 4. We have 2 male voices, male casual and male formal, and 2 female voices, 1 casual and 1 formal, and that is the default one called Sarah. So here we tap into this object of different voices, and then depending on the voice, which is either male or female, and the style, we choose the voice ID which we want to use. Once that is done, we are ready to set up our VAPI assistant. We give it a name called Companion. We give it the first message that it's going to say, such as, hello, let's start the session. Today we'll be talking about topic. Now, that topic is a variable value that we're passing into the assistant. If we head back into our ID page right here, you'll notice that we're passing these 3 variable values, the subject, the topic, and the style. And we can use them then within that bot. So I'll head back over into our utils, and you can see that the first one we're using is the topic. Next, we can choose the transcriber that'll give us the text version of the conversation we're having or what the assistant is saying. And then what is super cool is that out of the box, VAPI gives us with their 11 Labs provider. So you don't have to create an account on there, it just comes pre-built in. I played with different settings a bit, such as the stability, similarity boost, speed, and style, and I found those values to work the best. Finally, we choose the model for the actual conversation. I'm using a GPT-4 OpenAI model, and here we give it a system role, saying that you're a highly knowledgeable tutor teaching a real-time voice session with a student. Your goal is to teach the student about the topic and subject. Guidelines: stick to the given topic, which is a dynamic variable, and subject, and teach the student about it. Keep the conversation flowing smoothly while maintaining control. From time to time, make sure that the student is following you and understands you. Break down the topic into smaller parts and teach the student one part at a time. Keep your style of conversation, and then either formal or casual. Keep your responses short, like in a real voice conversation. Do not include any special characters in your response. This is a voice conversation. You can think of this as sort of an AI's brain. It tells it what to do, what to know, and how to behave. This particular one is working pretty good, but you can tweak it to your needs if you want to. And you can experiment with some more injected variables. For now, I found the topic, subject, and conversational style to be more than enough. And now we are returning that assistant. So if we head back over here, we can say vapi.start, and we can call the configure assistant function. And to it, we need to provide the 2 props it wants, which is going to be the voice and the style. And outside of it, we can also provide the assistant overrides, which we have declared right here. It's complaining a bit about the assistant override types, saying that the client messages should be an object, but I think this could be a possible TypeScript error, so I'll just say ts expect error to let it know that the type is good. Perfect. So now we're handling the call start, and on disconnect, we can just say set call status to be equal to call status dot finished, and we can initiate a vapi.stop method, which will stop the call. So now what do you say that we give it a shot? I'll click start session. It says connecting, and you can see that it is blinking right here.
Today we'll be talking about figuring out server versus client components in Next.js and React.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, let's first define server and client components in this context. In React, traditionally, all components run on the browser or client side. In Next.js, you also have server-side components, which run on the server before sending the page to the browser. Does that make sense so far?
It makes a lot of sense. So you're saying that there's 2 different types of components, and they're being rendered on the client or on the server?
Exactly. Server components handle heavy processing and can fetch data directly from databases. They also don't send JavaScript to the client, so they're faster. Meanwhile, client components handle interactivity like buttons, forms, or dynamic updates in the browser. Does that sound clear so far?
Yeah, that is actually super clear. Thank you so much. Okay, there we go. I just ended the session, and this was such a great educational session. For my taste, it does speak a bit too slow, but that's because it wants to teach us in the best way possible. So if you want to, you can maybe tweak this to speak a bit faster. or you can change the way that it interacts with you. But it actually very nicely listened to my questions and followed up with additional relevant information on the topic. So this is absolutely amazing. The last thing we have to do to fully finalize this teaching assistant is to implement the transcript. To do that, we can head over right here where we have the onMessage function, and we can accept a message of a type message right here. Vapi's SDKs return all kinds of different messages during the conversation. Information about events, errors, used functions, and so on. But here, we're looking specifically for transcript and saving it to our messages array. So I'll say if message.type is triple equal to transcript, and if message.transcript type is triple equal to final, in that case, we want to create a new message, which will be equal to role of message.role. It can be either us or the bot. And the content will be equal to message.transcript. And finally, we can add it to the messages array by saying set messages. Let's create that state field at the top. Use state snippet of messages, set messages, at the start equal to an empty array. And the type will be saved messages array, like this. Perfect. So now we can set messages into an array, add this new message, and spread all the previous messages. Now, when you want to set the state using the previous version of the same state, you get access to it as part of a callback function called prev. So we spread the previous state and we add a new message. So now on message, we're adding this new message. And right here below, where we have the handle call, that's where it makes sense to only provide us with the transcript messages. And then finally, we can head under the JSX part where it says messages, and we can get access to the current messages within the state by saying messages.map, where we get each individual message. And for each message, we can open up a new function block and check if message.role is equal to assistant. In that case, we can return a new p tag that'll have a key equal to message.content and a class name of maxsm text-sm. And here we can render the name of the assistant by running the name.split based on a space and only taking the first part of it. But let's fix this issue where I missed a parenthesis right here. And also, we need to close the split right here. I'll expand my editor to the full view so we can see it a bit more easily. So what we're doing is we're splitting the name based on the space to only get the first name. And then on it, we want to call the dot replace, where we're going to replace any dots or commas globally across that string with an empty string, like this. So I'll put it into multiple lines just so it's easier to see. Name.split, dot replace, and then finally, we end it right here. Now, this is just the name, so we have to also say colon, and then render the message.content. This is if the assistant is speaking, but if we are speaking, then I'll say else. I'll also create a p tag with a key equal to message.content and a class name equal to text-primary on max small devices text-sm, and I'll make it say username saying message.content, like this. Oh, and since we're in JSX, we actually have to return this, like this. And then at the bottom, we have this transcript fade, which is just a div with a gradient background, which moves to transparency, creating the illusion of a fading text. So I'll show it to you in action very soon. So with that in mind, we have everything we need to test out our assistant. And the only way to do it properly is by going full screen and starting a session. We actually already tested this one out, so what do you say that we create another? I'll head over onto my homepage and create a new companion. What should we learn about today? Let's dive into some maths. I'll give it the name of Mathy, the math expert, and it should help us with understanding the concept of infinity in mathematics. I'm gonna use a female formal voice, and the session should last, well, let's do it 2 minutes, just to see how much we can learn in about 2 minutes. I'll click Build Your Companion, and we automatically get redirected to it in the Math section. It says Mathy the Math Expert, and we can start our session. So let's give it a go.
Hello, let's start the session. Today we'll be talking about understanding the concept of infinity in math.
Sounds good, let's go.
Great. To start off, infinity is a concept that describes something without any limit. In mathematics, it's not a number in the traditional sense, but rather an idea that represents boundlessness or endlessness. Would you like an example to make this clearer?
Yeah, I sure would.
All right. Imagine counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, and so on. You can keep counting forever and there is no end. That endless quality is what we refer to as infinity. Does that example help?
It does, but I want to dive a bit deeper.
Perfect. Let's go a bit deeper. In math, infinity is often used to describe things like unending sequences or sizes that are unmeasurably large, but here's the key idea. While infinity is endless, it is not a number you can calculate with like 5 or 10. It's more of a concept. Do you follow?
Yeah, I do follow. I'm guessing that you're being very brief because I gave you only 2 minutes to teach me this, right?
Exactly. I'm keeping explanations concise since we're working with limited time. Would you like me to focus on any specific aspect of infinity?
No, I think this is it. We can end the session here. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad we could cover it. Have a great day.
Perfect. Well, this was a very quick one, and I immediately noticed how the AI assistant tweaked its explanations based on the time limit we gave it. This is perfect. Now, if I start the session one more time, I want to see if I can turn on or off my microphone.
Hello. Let's start the session. Today we'll be talking about understanding the concept of infinity in math.
But we do get an issue right here.
All right, what issue are you facing? Does it relate to infinity or something else?
No, it's something else. I'm fixing the way that I can mute myself when speaking with you.
Okay, let me know once you're ready and we can begin with the topic.
Perfect. I think the issue is just with the key that we're providing to the message. So if we head back over here, where we're providing the key to the message, we can also get access to the index of the message. And then instead of a message.content, we can provide the index right here as both of these keys. So now if we go back, we can try to turn on the mic or turn it off, but it actually doesn't work because we haven't yet activated the VAPI session. It says VAPI does not exist. So to fix this, I'll make this button disabled if the call status is not equal to call status dot active. So only if it is, then it should be enabled. Oh, and I just noticed that I passed it over to a p tag. It should actually be passed over to this button. Now, if you head back, it's not going to do anything if you click on it if you're not within the session. But if you start the session,
hello, let's start the session. Today we'll be talking about understanding the concept of...
There we go. There you have it. We have a fully functional AI teaching assistant teaching you about anything you want to learn about. I gotta say, this is out of this world. Just the ability to go ahead and build your voice companion, somebody that you can speak with about anything you want to learn about. And it's not just like somebody's reading things out to you from a textbook or you're seeing them on the screen. You can have an actual conversation with the instructor, have follow-up questions, or just say that something is unclear. Or maybe say that you're bored with the current explanation and they're not going to get mad. They're going to give you another better explanation. They're going to cater their education exactly to your learning style. And based off of these two companions we have tried so far, I gotta say, it is working perfectly. This was one of the longest lessons of the course, but at the same time, the one that allowed us to focus on all the core functionalities of our app. I hope you liked it. Now that we've implemented all the major app's functionalities, there's a lot of stuff that can break. So for that reason, to make this app truly production ready, and to make sure that it doesn't break for users when they actually want to test it out. And if it does break so we can very quickly fix it, I'll teach you how we can integrate Sentry into your app. So if and when the code breaks, we can fix it faster. Click the link down in the description to be able to follow along and see exactly what I'm seeing. And if you do that, you'll get 50,000 free errors, which should be more than enough to test with. So just create your account. And once you're in, you'll be redirected to your dashboard. As you can see, I'm using Sentry for many of our projects, including the JS Mastery Pro platform. Now, you could go ahead and click Create Project on top right, but what I prefer to do is just take your current organization URL and add onboarding. This will redirect you to a customized Sentry onboarding. So go ahead and click Start. And now you can choose the platform that you want to monitor. In this case, it's super easy. We'll go with Next.js. Next, you'll be given the automatic configuration string that you can just copy, head back over into your application and paste, and press enter. It'll ask you whether you want to install the Sentry installer, so just say yes, why, and then proceed with the update. A new browser window will appear asking you to authenticate and to choose your project, so just create a new one called Converso. And unfortunately, I got an error saying that there is a new log right here within our code base, Sentry installation error, that says that we could try to use force to make it work. Now we can rerun this command, but I'll remove the last part, which is the -- project, so it still allows us to choose the other one within our organization within the browser, but I'll add the -- force at the end. I'll say yes, continue, and log me into my account. I'll select JSM Converso as my project, but I'll add the -- force at the end, and I'll start with sudo in case it needs some additional permissions in order to set it up within my workspace. So I'll run it and enter my password. It's going to ask us whether we want to continue, say yes, and we already have an account. So it'll open it up within the browser, and we can choose our project. Now back within our terminal, it looks like it's installing it, and it's asking us a couple of questions. Do you want to route Sentry requests in the browser through your Next.js server to avoid ad blockers? Well, this can be super helpful if you want to have very detailed tracking, but it can increase your server load and hosting bill, so for now I'll say no. Do you want to enable tracing to track the performance of your app? I'll say yes. Do you want to enable session replays to get a video-like reproduction of errors during a user session? Definitely. Do you want to create an example page? Well, yes, let's do that as well. There's a little note on older versions of Next.js. I'll click I understand. It's going to ask us whether we're using CI/CD tool, so select yes. And now it's going to give us the token that we can now copy, and we'll be able to add it within our .env. So before I click yes, I'll head over to my .env.local, and I'll add a Sentry API key by saying Sentry auth token. And now I'll say yes, continue, I configured it. Perfect. You can validate your setup by restarting your developer environment and visiting the Sentry example page. So let me do just that. I will reload my app and I'll head over to Sentry example page. There we go. I think this is the only time in our career where we're going to purposefully throw an error within our application. So I'll say throw sample error. There we go. It was sent to Sentry and we can see it right here. Sentry example frontend error. This error is raised on the frontend on the example page. Now to finish up with the onboarding, you can click view sample error and your UI might look a bit different from what mine looks like. But don't worry about that. You can still head over to your projects, find Converso, and after some time, you should be able to see one frontend error and one API error. So now you can click on the frontend error to explore it and just take a look at the amount of details we're getting back about the user that caused that error. We can see where that error was caused. We can see under which environment. We can check out the browser. It was Chrome, the URL, the environment, and that's only where we begin. Because you can also see the IP address that caused the error and even the version of the operating system. Next, you can see the exact stack trace that led to the error and even a session replay allowing you to see exactly what your user was seeing when the error happened. And here it is. Then you can explore the breadcrumbs leading to that error and even what was showing in the console at the time that the error happened. The amount of details that you're getting right here is crazy. And if you want to head over to the API error, you're going to get a completely different set of data points, such as that this server was being ran on Node, and you can see exactly from where in the code it was triggered. Alongside issue tracking, you can also see your page load times for your applications, as well as the API latency, the web vitals, so you can improve your loading times, all the network requests that happen within your application, and how long they took, and even special insights for backend, where you can track exactly how many users are making which requests and whether they're working or not working. Okay, Sentry can do a lot of stuff, but what does this mean for you? Well, it means that as soon as somebody goes into your application and breaks something that you didn't anticipate they're going to be able to break, you'll immediately know that a random user somewhere across the world broke something with your application and is having difficulties, without needing to send them an email and ask them what they did. Because let's be honest, they can never tell us exactly what they did. You'll know exactly what happened, and you'll be able to fix it quick and push a fix to production, therefore improving your user's experience, and most importantly, not making them head over to their account billing and cancel their plan. That's why Sentry is a must on any modern SaaS application where you want to increase your customer satisfaction and keep them subscribed for a long time. And if you go back to the app, there's nothing else that has to be set up. Sentry added their own setup, which is now tracking your application, making sure that it is error-free. Super simple, yet so crucial. Now that we've implemented our app's primary feature, which is the conversation with the AI coach, well, we have to store that conversation into the session history so that later on we can display it right here on our homepage under recently completed sessions. So head over into our details page and then into the companion component. Here, under the first use effect, when we ended the call, we also want to add it to the session history. So we have to do that right here. Add to session history, and then specify the companion ID that we want to add to that history. So we have to implement this new server action within lib actions companion actions, and then below get companion, I'll create a new one, export const add to session history. It'll be equal to an asynchronous function that accepts the companion ID of a type string. Within here, we first need to get access to our currently logged in user. So I'll say user ID is equal to await auth coming from clerk. Next, we want to create an instance of Supabase. So I'll say create Supabase client. And then we want to fetch the data from the current database history by saying const destructure the data and the error and make it equal to await Supabase dot from session underscore history dot insert. And we want to insert a companion underscore ID of companion ID and user underscore ID of user ID. That way we can get the session history exactly for that user and that companion. Next, if there is an error, in that case, we can just throw a new error with the error message. But if there's no errors, we can just return the data about that session. Now, after we add the session to the history, we also have to be able to fetch it. So I'll say export const get recent sessions, and that'll be equal to an asynchronous function that accepts the limit by default set to 10. And it also creates a new Supabase instance by saying create Supabase client. And we can try to fetch some other data and the error by saying await Supabase dot from session history table. I only want to search for companions with this specific companion ID, and I want to return everything for it. And then we can also order it. So that order by created at, and we can do it not in an ascending way. So I'll say ascending to false, rather it'll be descending from newest to oldest. And I'll limit it to our current limit, which is set to 10. Then again, if we have an error, we can simply throw that new error with the error message. But if we have successfully fetched the companions, we can return data.map, where we get each individual companion, but we have to destructure it because we have the data which contains the ID, the companion ID, and the whole companion. But since we just need the companion, we can just destructure it and return the companions. I'm missing an S right here. Perfect. So this is getting all the recent sessions for a specific companion ID. But now we also need to get all recent user sessions. So what I'll do is I will duplicate this entire get recent sessions function, and I'll rename it to get user sessions, where instead of the limit, we will accept the user ID of a type string and also a limit of 10. We will again create a Supabase client and fetch data from session history. We will select the companion ID, but we will only do it where the .eq user underscore ID matches the user ID that we're getting through props. And everything else will be the same. Perfect. Now get back to our on-call end within the companion component and uncomment what we just put here, and make sure to import the add to session history coming from our actions. Now, back within our application, let's have a session with one of our companions. I'll go with Matthew, and now start a call and wait for the AI to respond to you at least once.
Hello. Let's start the session. Today we'll be talking about understanding the concept of infinity in math.
Okay, so we're doing this so that the conversation can register on Vapi's end. Then we can end the call by clicking the End Session button. And now it should have been registered and it should have been added to our session history. You can check that out by heading over to Supabase for JSM SaaS project. You'll see that we have two different tables. So now head over to session history and take a look at this. We have one session by this user with this companion. That's everything we need. But now we want to show this data somewhere where it matters, and that's going to be our homepage. So head back over to app.page.tsx, which is our home, where we're currently rendering the fake data. Instead of rendering this fake data, remove these two additional companion cards. And what we want to do instead is just fetch all the companions and the recent sessions by saying const companions is equal to await get all companions, to which we need to pass a limit of just 3 because we were showing the 3 companions at the top. And then we can also fetch the recent sessions companions by making it equal to await get recent sessions, and to it we can pass 10 as the limit. Make sure to add async to this function because we are actually waiting for these pieces of data to come back from the server. And now we can put it to use by mapping over our companions and displaying a companion card for each one. So say companions.map, and then for each companion, automatically return a new companion card. So I'll actually use this one with the fake data, but I will clear that fake data right here and simply spread all the properties of a companion. We also have to give it a key since we're mapping over it, which is going to be companion.id. And for the color, we have to pass it separately because we have to call the getSubjectColor and then pass the companion.subject so we can generate a color based off of the subject. Now, if you get back to homepage, you'll see that we have 2 popular companions. And now we have to scroll down and fetch the recent sessions as well. We can do that very easily by passing the real recent sessions companions to this companions list, which we already created, which will then put them all in a table. So if you head back, you can see that we only have 1 recent session, which is exactly right. Now, just to test whether it's working properly, let's add 1 more companion and then have a conversation with them. This time, let's learn a bit about science. I'll call it Science Tutor. And we want to learn about the most interesting things in science. A bit generic, but hey, let's see what it does. We'll go with a casual style and let's make it 15-minute. I'll start the session.
Hello, let's start the session. Today we'll be talking about the most interesting things in science.
Okay, what do you have for me?
Let's start with black holes. They're regions in space where gravity is so strong, nothing, not even light, can escape. Fascinating, right?
Okay, yeah. Black holes are super interesting, so I would like to learn a bit more about that. But now I gotta demo the app to people learning. So let's see what do we have. Yep, the new science tutor had been added right here, and the recent session has been added to the table as well. Perfect. Now in the next lesson, we can focus on the My Journey tab, or in other words, the profile page. Let's implement our profile page where the currently logged in user can see how many sessions they've completed, how many companions they've created, and they can see a list of their most recent lessons. To implement it, we'll have to modify our profile. So let's first implement an action that would allow us to fetch the companions that this user has created. Once again, it'll be very similar to these last two functions. So let me just duplicate it once more and let me rename it to get user companions. It'll accept just the user ID. We create a Subo-based client and we make a fetch not to the session history, but to the companions that this user has created. From them, we can select everything that we can get back. So just select. And the EQ will be equal to author, which matches the user ID, because we only want to get the companions that that user has created. We check for the errors, and if there aren't any, we return the data. Now to show these companions, we will use the accordion component from ShadCN. So let's go ahead and install it. Within our terminal, simply run npx ShadCN add latest add accordion and use legacy period deps. Once it gets installed, head over to our profile page, which is under My Journey, create a new main page with a class name equal to on min-LG devices W3 or 4, and then create a new section right within it. Below this section, we want to copy and paste the usage of the accordion. So first, I'll get over the imports, and then I will copy the actual usage part and save it. Now, for some reason, when I reran the application, I got this cannot find OpenTelemetry core package, which I believe Sentry is using, so we have to go ahead and install it. So just run npm install, and then paste that package name right here if you're using it as well. If you install it and run the application, it'll spin it up so we can head over to the My Journey page, and you can see this accordion. But now let's focus on the rest of the profile page, and that first requires us to fetch the user details. So I'll say const user is equal to await current user coming from clerk, and to be able to use that, we have to turn this into an async function. Next, if there is no user, they cannot see that page, so I will simply redirect over to /sign-in. After that, we want to fetch all of the companions that belong to that user by saying await get user companions, to which we have to pass the user.id and also the session history of that user, which we can get by saying await get user sessions, to which we can pass the user.id. Thankfully, we have already created all of those server actions that give us that data. Now we can style it further by giving this section a class name equal to flex justify dash between gap of 4 on max small devices flex column and items dash center. Within it, we can render an image that'll have a source of user.imageURL and an alt tag of user.firstname, a width of a 110 and a height of 110 as well. And let's fix this class name. If you do this, you should be able to see our profile photo. Below the image, I'll render another div with a class name equal to flex dash call, and a gap of 2. And there we want to display an H1 that'll have a class name equal to font dash bold and text dash 2XL. There we want to render the user.firstname as well as the user.lastname. And below the H1, we can render a P tag that'll have a class name of text-sm, text-muted-foreground, and here we can render the user.email addresses 0.email address. So now we have both the full name and the email. Now after this section, I also wanted to have a div that would have a class name equal to flex, a gap of 4, and items-center. And then we can put both the image and this div containing the username and the email within it. So that way we can achieve a better layout. Now let's go 2 divs down, still within the section, and let's create another div with a class name equal to flex and a gap of 4 in between the elements, with another div with a class name equal to border-black, rounded-LG, padding of 3, a gap of 2, flex-call, so they appear one below another, and h-fit, so we can fit it within its current height. Within it, I'll display another div with a class name of flex, gap of 2, and items-center, within which I'll display an image with a source of /icons, /check.svg, with an alt tag of checkmark, a width of 22, a height of 22, and we can close it right here. What does this check mean? Well, we'll display a check for every single lesson that we have completed. So below this image, I'll display a p tag with a class name of text-2xl, font-bold, and I'll render the session history .length to see how many sessions we've had. So in this case, it is 2. And then below this div, we can render another div and say lessons completed. 2 lessons completed. Perfect. Now I will duplicate this entire div with the border all the way to its ending div, and I'll paste it below. This time, we won't show a check, but rather we'll show a cap SVG, and this one will show not a session history.length, but rather the companions.length, so we can see how many companions has this user created. So I'll say companions created. And now we have 2 lessons completed and 3 companions created. This will be super useful for tracking whether our users have crossed their billing features. For example, with a small plan, maybe they can only create 3 companions, but if they upgrade, they can create 5. Or maybe unlimited, who knows? That's the exact point of SaaS apps. You're the one to define what will be available within a specific billing plan. And finally, we have this accordion below the section with a type of multiple, not collapsible, where the accordion item will be set to recent. Accordion trigger will have a class name equal to text-2xl and font-bold, and it'll render the recent sessions. Then, under accordion content, we can simply re-render the companions list, which we created before, pass to it a title of recent sessions, and also pass the companions equal to session history. If we do that, automatically we'll be able to render a nice looking list of recent sessions. Let's also render a new accordion item just below this one and give it a value of companions with an accordion trigger that'll say not recent sessions, but my companions. And then we can also display the number of companions by saying companions.length. You know how typically you can see the number before you click on it. So for example, in this case, you have 3. And now below the accordion trigger, we can display the accordion content within which we'll just render the companions list component, this time with the title of my companions, companions equal to companions that this user has created, and save it. So now you can see recent sessions as well as my companions. But you can notice that the title always says recent sessions right here in the companions list, and that's because we haven't modified it right here where it says recent sessions. Instead, we should have used the real title that we passed to it. So now it says recent sessions and my companions. It looks great on mobile, but when expanded, it looks even better on desktop because you can see all of your recent sessions and immediately get back into them by clicking on them, or you can just view the companions you created that you maybe want to revisit. And with that in mind, we now have a full profile page where we can see the number of lessons completed and companions created. But if you remember properly, back on our subscription page, we listed a specific number of sessions and companions that each user can create at a specific point in time. So now is the time that we enforce those rules. We allowed our users to be able to authenticate into our application. We allowed them to create sessions and companions, and we're tracking the number of the lessons completed and companions created. But now is the time that we actually enforce our billing options. See, on our subscription page, we have 3 different plans. Instead of having this be a div, I'll turn it into a main tag so we get some additional spacing around it. And I'll zoom it in so you can see it better. Under the basic plan, a user should only be able to create 3 companions and have 10 conversations with these 3 companions. If we take a look at our current journey, we're almost there, right? We should not be able to create a 4th companion. But if we now go to home and try to create it, well, it actually redirects me to the companion builder and I would be able to create a 4th one. Sure, right now I am a core learner, but to show you how we should apply these limits, let me switch back over to the basic plan. Since Clerk Billing is still in beta, it is possible that sometimes you'll get this internal server error, but this didn't happen super often, and I'm sure that in no time, this will be fixed. So very soon, we'll switch over back to the basic plan, but in the meantime, let me show you how we can enforce those limits within our application. So if the user crossed a specific limit, then we point them to upgrade to the next bigger plan. Back within our code, head over to the companion.actions.ts file, and at the bottom, we'll implement a new server function called export const new companion permissions. It'll be equal to an async action like all the other ones. Then, within it, we have to get access to the currently logged in user ID, as well as to the has method coming from Clerk, which will be equal to await auth. On Clerk Docs for Clerk Billing for B2C SaaS applications, which is exactly what we're trying to achieve, we have already enabled billing, set up our payment gateway, created a plan, and added features to that plan. We have also created a pricing page, but now we have to control access with features and plans. And that is something that is very hard to do within your SaaS apps because there are so many features, different plans, and you have to monitor which user belongs to which membership plan and which features does that membership plan cover. Thankfully, Clerk makes it super simple using the has and protect methods. The only thing you have to say is has access to this specific plan or has access to this specific feature. Let me show you how we can implement it within the code. I'll also get access to the current Supabase instance by saying Supabase is equal to create Supabase client. And by default, I'll set the limit to be equal to 0. But then, using the has functionality, I will check whether the user has access to the Pro plan. Pro plan is our biggest plan, which offers the creation of unlimited companions. So in this case, I will just return true because this user can create as many as we want. But else if the user has access to a feature called 3 companion limit, in that case, we want to set the limit to 3. And I'll add another else if and check if they have access to the 10 companion limit feature. In that case, we'll set the limit over to 10. And if you're wondering, how did I come across these names, 3 companion limit and 10 companion limit with underscores? Well, those have to match exactly with the features that you have within your Clerk Billing dashboard. So head over to your Clerk dashboard, configure, and then scroll down to Billing Subscription Plans. Head over to the basic plan and find the 3 active companions feature. And in this case, looks like the slug. And this slug has to match this one right here. In this case, they're not matching, so let's fix it. 3 companion limit and save. If the slug doesn't match, it'll not properly recognize the amount of credits that the user has. And let's also head over to the core learner and set the 10 active companions to say 10 companion limit. update, and save. Perfect. Now we can get access to the amount of companions this user has created within the database by saying const destructure the data and the error is equal to await supabase dot from companions dot select ID and give us back the exact count. Only return those where the author is equal to the current user ID. Then, if we get back an error, then we can simply throw a new error with an error message. Else, if there aren't any errors, we can get access to the companion count that we have created so far, which is under data.length. And finally, if the companion count is greater than or equal to the limit that we have set within clerk billing, then we will return false. Else, we will return true, meaning they can or they can't access that feature. And now that we have created this new function that checks for the user's ability to create a new companion, we can now head over to the new companion page. That is right here under companions, new. And I will call this server action right here at the top by saying const can create companion and make it equal to await new companion permissions. And then based off of this variable, we can either show the entire article with the companion builder right here by using a ternary. So if can create companion, then we show this article, same what we have been showing before to the users that were actually able to create them. Or if we can't create any more, we can show a new article with a class name equal to companion limit, and we can close it right here, where we can render an image with a source of images limit.svg with an alt tag of companion limit reached, a width of about 360 and a height of about 230. And below it, I'll render a div that'll have a class name equal to CTA badge, and it'll say upgrade your plan, so that we eventually get to a page that looks like this. Upgrade your plan, you reached your limit, upgrade to create more companions and premium features, and then a button that will lead us to Clerk's pricing page. So below this div, I'll create an H1 that'll simply say you've reached your limit. Then below it, I'll create a P tag that'll say you've reached your companion limit, upgrade to create more companions and access premium features. And then below it, I'll render a link coming from Next Navigation with an href pointing to subscription and a class name equal to BTN primary with a full width and justify center, so we can see it right here in the center of our screen. And this link will simply say upgrade my plan. Perfect. So now, just to be able to test it, I will head over to new companion permissions, and since I'm currently on the core plan, I will change this 10 companion limit to about, let's do 3, because I have created 3 so far, and I should not be able to create more. So if we head back over to our application, head over to build a new companion, you can now see companion limit reached. It looks like our image didn't render properly. That's because I missed a / right here. There we go. Upgrade your plan. I can even zoom out. And it looks like I missed a BTN class right here on the button. There we go. So now I am blocked for creating more companions. And what I can do instead is just navigate over to the subscription, which is when I can switch to another plan and then be able to create more. For the time being, I'll just go back and switch this limit back to 10 for the core users. So if I do that, since I'm a core learner right now and I have only created 3 companions, I should be able to go back and create a 4th one. This is working like a charm. And for every new user that gets created, all of this will be managed automatically for you without you having to think about different permissions, plans, and features. The fact that the user account is directly connected to the billing, which is then connected to the features of that plan, is just crazy. And now that the Clerk team implemented this, it seems like it was a plan all along because these features tie together perfectly. And at this point, I think that we can call this application a true SaaS app. Now, you've probably noticed that the Figma design contains these bookmark icons at the top of every card. It allows you to add it to your companion library and then access it very simply by seeing only the companions that you have bookmarked. A pretty cool feature that you can maybe add to a Pro or Elite plan. But this is a feature that we haven't implemented yet, and that's for a reason. It's a task that I have left for you to do, to test how much you have learned during this course. Of course, I'll provide the final code, and if you get stuck, on this video kit, somewhere near the bottom, I'll also provide you with some hints on how we can make it happen. But take a second and try to implement it on your own first. You can do it. Now that we're done with our app, the last remaining step is to deploy to the internet so that everyone can see it and actually pay for your features. To do that, you first have to create a new repo on GitHub. If you've been following carefully, then you know that we have already done that before. Oh look, some of you have already given this repo a star. So go ahead and push your code to GitHub by following the steps that you get when creating a new repo. Once your repo is up, head over to vercel.com and create a new project. If you published it recently, it should appear right at the top. So just click import. It'll automatically recognize that you used Next.js to publish it. And just before we deploy it, you can enter your environment variables right here. So head over to your .env.local, copy all of the variables together, and just paste them into the first field, which will automatically generate them right here. And then click deploy. This process will take about a minute, so let's pause right here and I'll be right back. After about 2 minutes, we'll just get a little warning that says that some of our TypeScript types are not met. Thankfully, a fix for this is super simple. You just have to head over to your .next.js config and above images, say TypeScript, and then just say ignore build errors, set to true. We've used TypeScript on this entire project and we've been very careful of the types, but it is possible that one or two slipped. So just to make sure that our build doesn't fail like it did, we can just add this little fix right here. And then type git add dot, git commit -m, fix TypeScript, and then git push. If you head back over to your projects, you'll notice that this will automatically re-trigger a deployment on your SaaS app. So we'll have to wait 2 more minutes, and hopefully this time it builds properly. Oh, the second time the error is still here, and it looks like it is TypeScript related, but it is also ESLint. So the same thing that we've done before within our next config, we have to do it again, but this time for ESLint by saying ESLint ignore during builds, set to true. And for TypeScript, it is ignore build errors, set to true. So if you fix this, we can one more time do a git add dot, git commit -m, fix ESLint, and then git push.